We live in a world of 100% productivity. It is encouraged by our peers and society, and it is often told that it is the demon within us. But rarely do we hear about procrastination talked about in the same positive light productivity is. People will tell you how much they've got done with their day, how little they've procrastinated, and how they've moved from one task to the next seamlessly without wasting any time in between. But is 100% productivity the right thing for ourselves? Does procrastination have a place in our society along with productivity? Because in the past, procrastination has been seen to help our society, with some of the greatest inventions of our history coming to fruition as a result of procrastination. Procrastination adds an element of spontaneity to our lives, that in the mundane routines we have in our lives of getting up, going to work, eating, working, coming back, and going to sleep. This routine that some of us live day in, day out is mundane and boring. And procrastination adds an element of spontaneity, something to mix your life up a bit, where you don't know what's going to happen. So we live for procrastination, some of us, because routine is boring. Now, the word procrastination comes from Latin, pro meaning forward, and crassinus deferring to tomorrow. So we are literally moving something forward to tomorrow by procrastination. Now, I'm sure most of you know who this is. This is Leonardo Da Vinci, one of the most famous procrastinators in the history of our society. He was often locked in his room forced to work on his commissioned pieces by people because he was so bad at procrastinating, there was no other way he would finish his pieces. But in this procrastination, he came up with some of the greatest inventions that we use in our society today. Ball bearings and parachutes are incredibly used day in, day out. How would we ever go skydiving if we did not have parachutes? How would people save their own lives when the first parachute fails? There needs to be the second one. Now, this is something that's familiar to all of us. You get set an essay or a deadline, and you have loads of time to do it. But the smart people among us will break it up evenly. But the procrastinator will do something like this, that on the night of your deadline, at 10 p.m., you realize you've done no work, and that the only opportunity left to do is to work into the night. And this productivity increases exponentially. But why is this? In the mind of the procrastinator, it is fear and anxiety that causes this change in productivity. Because when we have all the time, there's no anxiety from failure or fear of failure. But when we are forced to come to face with what we've done, we have to work. There is nothing else left to do but to work. Now, for many a procrastinator to be glad to hear, it's not actually our fault as to the reason we procrastinate. It's down to evolution and our biology, which is a great excuse to use for when your essay is handing in late or you've missed a deadline. It's a great thing to use to your teacher as well. Now, this is caused by the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system being in constant conflict whenever you're trying to do work. The limbic system is fully developed from birth, whereas the prefrontal cortex is trying to catch up and is constantly developing throughout our life. Now, as you can see here, the limbic system is associated with learning and emotions, and the prefrontal cortex, decision-making and self-control. Now, every human at heart is a dopamine and adrenaline addict, and this is where the limbic system comes into play, because the limbic system controls the secretion of dopamine, which makes us happy, and everyone would much rather be happy and have that dopamine release, as opposed to doing work, working tirelessly to complete the essay that you've been set. But how does the prefrontal cortex come into play? It has to be forced to work by some sort of sudden change in event, such as it being 11 p.m. on a Sunday night before your work starts. But it has to be forced to work. You have to tell it to work, to override the limbic system, because the prefrontal cortex is not as developed. Now, this is something familiar to many of us. The procrastinator's mind is something interesting. No one really knows why it happens, but I think most of us can associate with SpongeBob and procrastinating in this sense, as a child who never gets any of his work done, as seen through most of his episodes of the show. Now, these are some of the things that the procrastinator might do while they're working. They waste their time away looking at pictures on the internet of cute animals, dogs, whether it be goat in a jumper, as some of the things that many of us may have whittled our time away on, browsing social media, doing nothing else instead of our work. Because it is extremely easy to get distracted by something as cute as this. Many of us would have spent time looking at pictures as cute as this, and that is the reason, as good a reason as any, for not doing that essay. And here's a final one of another cute puppy for you. Instead of writing my talk, I was doing this and finding pictures for this specific PowerPoint. Now, while we're procrastinating, we come up with the endless possibilities of what could go wrong. What if I don't write that essay? What if I don't send that text? What if I don't send that email or make that call to my boss? The ideas come flitting in and out of our minds so quickly, we never latch onto any of them. But what if there was a way to control procrastination? Such as structured procrastination, where you set aside some time each day to merely procrastinate, to not do anything else, to not do your work, but you're still procrastinating in the sense that you're not getting your actual work done, but you're still doing something semi-productive with your time. You have that time to latch onto those ideas that you have, instead of letting them flit in and out of your mind without realizing. Now, we have to go into action. Our minds, in that split second, go into action when we're procrastinating. But this isn't the same case. As it was found in an office, there was a study conducted where it was found that people procrastinated for 2 hours a day in a 9 till 5 job. So you could have gone to work at 11 and come back at 5, or gone to work at 9 and finished earlier at 3. Seen your family more, seen your kids, done something extra with that time, instead of wasting it away at work, where potentially you do not want to be. Yet we still elect to procrastinate at our workplace, wasting our time, which then cost companies upwards of £9,000 a year on wasted time. This is a waste that is not needed, but we'd all much rather make that coffee, talk to our colleague across the room, or simply just browse social media for cute pictures. But procrastination can be detrimental, because if companies are wasting £9,000 on wasted time and wages, where else could this productivity go? Because there could be an argument made that these people who are procrastinating are still getting the same amount of work done as those who are being productive in their 9 till 5 period. They're just doing it in a smaller amount of time. So the argument could be made that these people are actually more productive than the people who say they are 100% productive all the time. Now, we are obviously all adrenaline addicts at heart, and dopamine, as has been mentioned before, which is the whole reason for procrastination. Because nobody wants to slave away at their desk. We all want to go outside and do things that are so much more fun than actually doing our work. Because who doesn't really want to go skydiving unless you're obviously afraid of heights, and then that's understandable. But why is this the case? We go through the endless possibilities that could happen if we procrastinate, the things that can go wrong. The mind is an incredible thing. We have so many ideas, but we never latch onto any of them by procrastinating. We can never latch onto them because we're worried of what might happen if we continue to procrastinate. So we never take the time to hold on to these ideas. Because some of humanity's best ideas have come from procrastinating, as seen from Leonardo Da Vinci earlier on. His best ideas came from while he was procrastinating. So your next best idea could come from that structured procrastination, or simply procrastinating in itself. That one idea that flits in and out of your head could turn into a spontaneous holiday, that text message sent, that email sent, that essay written, if you really want to write an essay in your free time. But this is something that a lot of people do. We all waste time. And anyone who tells you they've not procrastinated in their lives is lying to you. Because I'm sure all of us have snoozed an alarm at some point in our lives. We've all hit the snooze for an extra 5 minutes of sleep. And that's the first thing of procrastination you've done in your day. You've procrastinated getting up, getting out of bed and starting your day. And then that sets the precedent for the rest of the day. You continue to procrastinate because it's the first thing you've done. Your mind is set in the mode of procrastinating. And you continue to do this. People will always procrastinate getting up because we all just love our sleep too much. No one can say no to an extra 10, 15 minutes in bed by hitting the snooze alarm again. Now, I'll close with this. We all procrastinate. It's something inevitable. But why don't we try and control procrastination and keep it isolated by making it structured? We could all take maybe half an hour a day to simply procrastinate, to let ideas flit in and out of our head. We don't know what might arise from it, because procrastination adds a sense of spontaneity to our lives, something that breaks the mundane routine that some of us live. Your next best idea could be just one more procrastination session away. And the title of this, as you all saw, was Can Procrastination Ever Be Good for Humanity? But in the spirit of procrastination, that can be left to tomorrow, where 99% of human productivity lives. Thank you.